All right.
To be here. So thank you all for coming and joining me in one of your evenings, especially if you are Zoomed out, Microsoft Teamed out, Skyped out, face placed out, and all that other kind of stuff. So thank you so much for coming here today. And so I very much appreciate you spending some time. We're going to talk about a topic that is just really near and dear to my heart. As Catherine just mentioned, I'm working on my doctorate because I don't have enough on my plate to do. And it's all about agility. And I actually made a switch over the weekend. Instead of focusing on middle management, I decided to focus in on culture and how it plays a role in change. And so I'm excited for that as well. So as Catherine mentioned, I am a CST certified Agile leadership educator. So a little bit about me. I've been working in and around technology for around 30 years or so. And my first 10 years was spent primarily as, a programmer, which I found out after a couple of years, I really wasn't very good at it. And what really called to me was some of the project management things, some of the um, business analysis. And in 1999, I got to a project that was 3 years late and $50 million over budget. Woohoo! And so they said, could you finish it by the end of the year? I'm like, nope. And so with that, it really got me introduced to the concepts of, what was to become agile, outcomes based, iterative incremental development, making decisions based off of data and working together across teams in a collaborative manner. And so I was really excited about those. And so we started to tap into those things about agile and agility and just has been really excited to be working with that. I've been helping organizations make the switch for about the last, 15, 20 years or so. I made many mistakes along the way, so hopefully through the consulting work you can not make the same mistakes I made. Now for tonight, we're going to talk about a few different concepts really around agility. I find that when I go out into the environment and they say, hey, we want to have greater agility, fantastic, what does that look like? And they give me an answer like, yeah, just put in Jira. Or could you just train a team over in Scrum, or hey, help them learn some Kanban? Yeah, that's agility. I'm like, oh, uh-oh. We might want to have a discussion. And so to talk about the distinction between agile and agility, but more specifically, because of this whole COVID situation, it's kind of kicked it up into hyperdrive. And what does it really mean to be working in agility, especially in this really hyperdrived world? And so I just wanted to explore that. It's just that passion area of mine. As part of working on the doctorate, I probably have seen way too many models of agility. It turns out there's a couple dozen that are out there, and those are just the ones that I found. So we're just going to take a look at 3 of the ones that I think you might want to be interested in. And then specifically in the second half, we're going to get into a lot more smaller breakout rooms to really explore what does agility mean to you. As we kind of, really have found, especially in the last, 6 months or so, this concept of VUCA, V-U-C-A. The business environment has just really been turned on its side. It's just been incredibly volatile, meaning that it can just, turn on a dime, uncertain, not knowing what's going to be coming there, complex, especially with so many things that are integrated with each other. And it's very ambiguous out there, meaning that, seeing, past, the dashboard on a really foggy day, it's just really hard to see. And so when we start talking about agility and working in this VUCA world, it becomes, oh my gosh, something that we just really have to do, especially as Agile practitioners, Agile lovers, Agile friends of Agile, whatever it is that you want to call it. Having some awareness in some of those is going to be really kind of key about what is agility in this world where it's not just VUCA, it's like hyper VUCA. What we're going to do here is a couple little polls. We're going to start off the day. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat window down below. So if you have in your chat window very shortly there, let me go ahead and grab this. Let me put it in there. That is the quickest way to get to our first poll. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just go over into Menti. I'll also put it up here on the screen. And I'd like for you to take a look at this concept of business agility. Chances are, to get to a really good level of business agility, there's some challenges that typically pop up there. What I'd like for you to do is go to the link, or the one again down in the chat window. You might have to click on the ... more to get to your chat window. Take a look at some of the challenges to increasing business agility and just, put it in order from most impactful to least impactful. Now, if you're doing this on your phone, you'll probably just have to, scroll things up and down. But if you're doing this on site, on the website and stuff like that, you have to choose your first one, the list gets smaller, choose your second one, the list gets smaller, and so forth until you get all 5 up there. But we'll kind of hang out here for another minute or two to give you folks just a couple more moments here. It looks like we got about 5 or so folks that have put in their answers here. I love watching this dynamically. Love to see all the stuff move around. But it turns out with many of the studies that are out there, there's typically anywhere between 5 and 10 typical challenges that are out there when it comes to business agility. We'll give it about another 30 seconds or so. And so the ones that we see here, culture, mindset, leadership, alignment, change management, are the ones that I found probably in a good 5, 6, 7 of those studies that are out there. All right, so it looks like we're kind of narrowing in on culture. Ooh, we've got a tie now between agile mindset and leadership style. This is when it would be really good in Zoom if we had some music to play some really intense, Jeopardy-like music. All right, so why don't we go ahead and pause right here with the responses that we see here. Yeah, when it comes to increasing business agility, and this is one of the reasons why I changed my doctoral thesis over into culture, is because I'm finding that culture happens to be one of those things that really impacts organizations to make that switch over into greater agility. It turns out that one of the most, quote, popular organizational cultures that is out there in the world is what they call a controlling culture. Now, it's probably a good thing that we're all sitting down, you got your cameras turned off and stuff like that, like shock, surprise, controlling culture being one of the most popular in the world. But if you take a look at some of those success rates, or as I like to call them more the failure rates of transitioning over into agile approaches so that you can get to greater agility, culture pops up as the #1 reason in many, many of the surveys. Mindset and leadership style is what we saw here tonight, kind of flip-flop in the 2nd and 3rd spot. So it's interesting to see here, what we have on the screen here is very similar to what I see out there in the industry. So thank you for doing that. And what we're going to do is we're going to populate those results in the screen here so that when you download the slides later, you can have a screenshot of that slide in there and start to compare it against whatever survey or study that you have out there. Now, here's the interesting thing that's out there. When you've got organizations that can figure out a way not just to introduce Agile to a couple teams, but to really, truly introduce the concept of agility across an entire organization. So I'm talking about not just the team level, but like the management and the leadership levels. And not just in IT, but across the organization as a whole. So looking at the whole system of things. There was a study that was done. Now hold your seats for this one here, because I actually think it's a good study. So when I say the author, don't freak out too much. It was done by McKinsey in conjunction with Scrum.org. Now, McKinsey and Scrum.org, they've been working together, and more specifically McKinsey, and they've really increased the robustness of their research. And they've actually done some really good research that's really scientifically sound over the last couple of years. But this report came out earlier this year, and that the organizations that really attacked business agility, again, holistically across the whole system, across all levels, saw these improvements in their organization. Employee engagement raised by 20 to 30 points, customer satisfaction from 10 to 30 points, operational performance from 30 to 50% faster. And so when you put those three things together, they kind of combined some more numbers down. They said, okay, financial performance was increased anywhere between 20 and 30%. So if you're running into that executive, just hypothetically, you're running into that executive that's saying, why should we invest in these things such as Agile? What is this whole thing, agility? What am I going to get out of this? This is an excellent study that you can pull up there. It's written for executives, and we got the little link that's as part down there. You can print that out and say, yeah, even McKinsey and Scrum.org, one of the co-authors of Scrum, they did this together and they came up with these numbers. And so it's a really nice study for you to have to show some of the value in getting greater agility and not just focusing on putting Agile approaches in just one area. But the interesting thing comes about is, what happens when we start taking a look at the definition of agility? And so we're going to do our second poll here. Let me just do a little switch with this here. Give me a second here so I can turn this on. Come here, present. Here's what I'd like for you to do. I'd like for you to think of, and this should be popping up if you click on the link down below or you type in the numbers, menti.com, and then that passcode. Looking for a word or two that you might use to describe agility. And so if you could take a look at there, excellent. We already got our first response. Excellent. You guys are fast. Sometimes this takes a minute or two. Yeah, like I said, working on my doctorate, whenever I started to look out there, I said, hey, what about that word agility? Literally hundreds and hundreds of studies came up there, and there was little, how shall I say, consensus in what that definition was. And I started to go back into some of the history of what is agility. And it was really interesting because a lot of these concepts of like Agile and agility can be related all the way back into the early 1970s. I'm like, wow. So these folks have been tackling this for quite some time. All right, we'll give it about another 30 seconds or so as you input some of the comments in there. We got 15 responses out of 20 in the session so far. Yeah, so we'll give about another 10 seconds or so. All right. So I'm kind of curious, Catherine, Sherry, have you used this in any of these meetups before? Any of this approach with the
Not
word
here.
clouds?
Use different word clouds elsewhere in an educational setting, but not this one.
Yeah, nice. Excellent. So we got almost nearly everybody with their input. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. So it looks like Anita has figured out how to draw on the screen. I'm not quite sure. We'll take care of that a little bit later. So it looks like a couple of the words here, flexibility, excellent, adaptability. So I'm seeing several of those phrases and words about flexible and adaptability, quickly changing. I also love in here about things like learning, listening, and being open-minded. Because especially in able to read and respond to a particular environment, being able to listen, learn, and observe, and being open to what the data is telling you, absolutely. Some adaptation, transparent mindset, excellent. Some things here. What I love out of this here is I don't see any negative words in here. I always get a little scared when I do this with executives sometimes. Like, what are some of the words that are going to pop up out of there? But these seem to be quite positive. But yeah, but what I'm not seeing in here is a concept of maybe stability. I'm seeing all the flexibility and good enough, transparent response. I'm not sure if I'm seeing the word stability in here. So I'm going to leave that as a little teaser because there is an element to agility that's also related to stability. So we're going to come back to that concept after we go through a couple models here. So let me pull up my slides here. And I'm going to cover some of the definitions that we see. And I'm not sure how to clear that pencil mark on the screen here, Catherine. So maybe it's part of the annotation.
I think it's like a beloved birthmark.
Yeah, it
We
looks
would just
pretty.
accept it for what it is, or
Yeah.
figure out how to clean it
Now
later.
I kind of want to draw on it and add to it, but so I get very distracted. So
You mean you can't click on it and delete? Is it not clickable?
it's an annotation, but I'm not sure how to remove that annotation.
So is your slides through Menti as well? Are they all connected?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll get there. We'll figure it out. All right. So how would you define business agility? Well, there's going to be 3 different reports that we're going to talk about tonight. The first one that I really like is something from a nonprofit institute, Evan Laybourne, called the Business Agility Institute. He created this several years ago to really accelerate the concept that agile and agility were 2 separate things. And what he came up was with the capacity and willingness of an organization to adapt, to create, and leverage change for the customer's benefit. And if you take a look at another one, and this is going to be a little bit controversial, but I actually think the definition from SAFe, the Scaled Agile Framework, the definition for agility and how they approach agility, I think is actually pretty good. It's pretty comprehensive. You know, its ability to compete and thrive in a digital age by responding to the market changes and emerging opportunities with innovative business solutions. Now, the third one I'm going to pop up here, and it's from that same McKinsey study, Agile organizations can quickly redirect their people and priorities toward value-creating opportunities. But what you don't see in some of these things here, and it was, you know, along the lines of what I said about earlier about stability. Now, some of these studies here, especially in the McKinsey one, saying, yeah, you can do all these things such as adjust, react, redirect, you know, take people moving from one way and over there. But they're saying there's certain aspects, though, that you want to have some stability. You probably want to have some stability like in your company culture. You probably want to have some stability in at least the direction, the overall direction and vision of your company. So there's some elements of that. You probably want to have some stability in the people who you have. And when you have some of those things and you can balance it with the direction of what the environment is telling you, that's where the power of agility comes. What I'd like to do now is take a look at a couple of those different models. I'm going to go through this very quickly so that you can just kind of get a flavor for if you're looking for, well, how do I take a look at, you know, implementing agility at my organization? I want to take a look at 3 different things that might help you determine what some of those next steps are. Now, this first one is that Business Agility Institute report. We got the links down here. They just recently released, like last week, I think it was last week, or the week before, the 2020 report. So what you see here is the 2019 stuff, but this stuff right here you see on the screen didn't change. When they talk about agility from the Business Agility Institute, they take a look at it from 3 equal angles, from a leadership angle, from an individual's angle, and an operations angle. And what you can see here is they believe that agility comes from, again, that whole system mindset where agility is everybody's responsibility. But the interesting thing here is look at where the customer is. All these actions that are happening from leadership, from individuals and operations, all revolve around the customer. And so what we're trying to do here is put the highlight and the focus in on the customer. They put them at the customer at the center of everything. That's what I like about this particular model. It kind of makes it really clear that the customer is the center there. The next model comes from SAFe. What I like about this model is, hey, look at what's at the middle. We also have the customer centricity, the customer as the focus. And in order to have greater business agility, you need to take a look at it from, in their perspective, 7 different areas. Everything from having the technical capabilities of running teams, getting stuff out the door, having your entire enterprise get stuff out the door, making sure you're working on the right thing, having the whole organization involved, not just IT teams, and having that continuous learning culture so that you can continuously evolve, and then having the leadership mindset to enable the whole environment to operate in this way. I thought this was a really interesting model for agility, again, keeping the customer in the middle. Now, the third model that we're going to talk about here comes from McKinsey. McKinsey's doesn't have, the customer per se at the middle in their physical model, but they really drive the concept of the reason that we're trying to do agility in the first place is to drive value for the customers. And they look at it from 5 different ways. They talk about it from setting strategy. How do you have a structure, the hierarchy, how you put teams together, and how you empower them? What are the processes that you put in place? Who are the people that you hire? And then do you have the environment, the technical environment to enable all these things to work together? So again, you can click on the links to get to each one of those 3 studies that you have here. But what I like when you take a step back and you look at all of these 3 main frameworks, if you will, for greater agility, here's some really big ahas. And these are some of the things that I like to share with the executives and the management teams that I work with. When you start talking about agility, what we have to do is we have to remember that it's a whole system. It's not just one group producing a product or service and getting it out the door. It takes, in most organizations, a set of teams, a set of departments, a set of skills to get something out of the door. So it's, when you talk about agility, it's more than just one area. Putting the customer first, whoever your customer might be, whether it's an internal customer or an external customer. So we want to make sure that we identify who those people are and deliver the value very quickly to them. When we take a look at a lot of the organizations that we work with today, there's still an emphasis on things such as project funding, project teams, project end dates, which really kind of gets you into what we're going to call an output. You're putting an output to a fixed something over a fixed period of time. What we want to do when we start talking about agility is we want to be aware of those things, but what's going to have greater value is enabling some sort of an outcome to your customer set. And so what we really want to do here is figure out, okay, what's the product need to do? Why do they need that? So it's really about that outcomes-based approach to getting stuff out there. And then lastly, success of these Agile initiatives to get to greater agility really depends on some leadership effectiveness. Again, it's not just the teams that are doing this, it's the leadership who sets up the environment to make sure that this is successful, and making a conscious addressing of what's happening within organizational culture. And so net, when you start putting all these things together, like, okay, so to get to greater agility, it's more than just Agile for a team. Where should we start? Where should we start? And so Catherine and Sherry, we're going to get ready to go into a couple breakout rooms here. Looks like we've got 18 participants minus you, me, 3. Let's go for 3 rooms of 5 or so. What we're going to do is we're going to actually head into a tool, my other favorite tool, Mural. And I am going to get the link for that. If you just give me a second here, I'll get the link. I'll put that into the chat window below. And what we're going to do is we're going to put you into 3 different rooms. Each of the rooms has a number and a color. So let me go ahead and put the link for Mural in the chat window. So you should have it there. And if you could come into our Mural board here as a visitor. In a few minutes here, we're going to put you into one of 3 rooms. We're going to put you into the green room, which is team number 1, or the blue room, which is team number 2, or the yellow room, which is team number 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to put about 8 minutes on the clock. When you get into your breakout room, introduce yourself to each other when you get into the room. And what I want you to do is amongst your team of 4 or 5 people in your breakout room, these little things here slide. So what I want you to do is walk through each one of these within your room. So make sure that you're working in the right board when you get there, and just put them in order from top to bottom. Drag number 1, the most important, up here. Drag number 2, here, and just fill up those boxes. And depending on how much time you have left, we've got a little space down here. Have a discussion why you picked that particular one as your number 1. All right, we're just going to spend about 30 seconds with each group. I'd like for each group to, again, as I warned you before you went into your breakout rooms, just give us a nice little discussion of, okay, we chose this one as our top one because of XYZ. All right, so why don't we go in order for our first debrief here. So team number 1, tell us about how you came up with this and why it was number 1.
So we felt that culture, people are always number 1, and in order for everyone to kind of work towards the same goal, you need that shared culture. It unifies everyone together, and you need people to be unified together for everything else to work.
Yeah, so totally agree. And I think when you've got that organization aligned around that culture in that direction, that's so incredibly important. One thing that I want us to realize, and just you probably have already experienced this as part of your Agile journeys, is that even within a company culture, you're going to have subcultures. Different groups do things maybe just a little bit of a different way. And so if you could be aware of subculture in addition to the overall arching culture of the organization, that could be something as well. All right, so thank you very much, team number 1. Let's go to team number 2. Hey, looks like we've got people as your top choice. Tell us a little bit about that.
Definitely people. People are the most important. And we were focused on the culture. That's what made us, we're interested in our teams and our coworkers, and that's what's the most important. We talked about whether process should be higher or, strategy or structure, based on, how, with some experience around how companies might implement change. Mm-hmm. So with some of the experiences, the way maybe change isn't done well, that it's probably more important to get the structure or maybe even the strategy in place before you move on to the process. Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that was just, something that came up, just with experience of if you're changing something, and it's pretty important on like an effective and helpful way with implementing a different structure.
Yeah. And it's interesting because sometimes people choose to do structure first and then process and stuff later. Some people try to do maybe strategy first, and then it, maybe informs a little bit of process and then a little bit of structure. So we look at it kind of almost like in a pyramid or a triangle, where you just need to decide for your organization which one you want to tackle first, because the other two will follow as you go along.
Well, I think we wanted to put emphasis on, because we talked about structure and like how it's being implemented, but with the emphasis on the way that it's implemented, that's a huge importance of it. Yeah. There's good ways to do it and there's bad ways to do it. Yeah. And in this particular case with this person's experience in our group, it's not being done well. And it's really breaking up the culture and the people.
Yeah, I see that very much too. Well, thank you very much, team number 2, for sharing. Let's go to team number 3, yellow team. Tell us about your list here.
I think you're on mute, Larry.
Yeah. Do we have somebody from the yellow team?
I think Lori's trying to speak, but she can't be heard. She had no microphones off. Lori, you trying to speak?
Okay, there we go. Sorry.
There it is.
The mysteries of that mute button. We said people, culture, leadership, and talent come first because culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
I missed that day in class, but I'm assuming that that was from a previous meetup where, yeah, strategy would come second to all those great cultural things that we've been talking about tonight. And the second thing was people over processes, which is, you know, good basic manifesto stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you start focusing in on the people, you naturally get the intrinsic buy-in and all those things, especially if you involve them as part of the process, et cetera, et cetera. Excellent. Thank you so much for doing that. We're going to do one more brief breakout group exercise here. And wanted to give you one more thing for you to consider as, again, where should you start things? Where should you start things? What we find is that, yeah, you can take a look at, in this case here, all three of you took culture, leadership, and talent was your number one. Strategy and structure were generally your number twos and number threes. And you say, okay, now that we've got kind of the general ballpark of the general area that we want to focus in on, remember when it starts talking about agility, what we want to do is that customer is at that center. What we have to do is figure out, all right, what is value to that person? What is the outcome that we're looking for? When we start to do all these things, what's that outcome that we're looking for? And I'm just going to zoom in here really quickly on the green team, but as you saw before, each of the teams has their own board. What we have found in our company, Agile Velocity, we put together a framework called Path to Agility. And Path to Agility is an outcomes-based framework that helps organizations figure out where they should focus their efforts. Once they have a big picture idea of where they want to go and what they want to look at, where should I start pulling some levers? And what we did is we found that, you know, over about a 10-year period, these 9 reasons for going towards greater agility kept coming up over and over and over again. What I'd like for you to do, and Catherine's going to put you back into your breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. What I'd like for you to do is for your group to have somebody be your brave volunteer because these reasons are contextual. What I want you to do is read through each one of these reasons here for whoever is your brave volunteer in the context. And I want you to pick up to three out of these 9 business outcomes, reasons why you would want to go for greater agility in the first place. Come up with 2 or 3 out of these 9 that resonate with whoever that volunteer is for your group. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm seeing at least 1 thumbs up there and some nods. Okay. So when you go back in your room, read through the 9 within the context of your volunteer. And, you know, again, just like before, just drag whichever 2 or 3 you choose. And again, green for team number 1, blue for team number 2, yellow for team number 3. All right, 10 minutes. Let's go. Team ended up with some choices. And what I'd like to do is, again, repeat team 1, 2, and 3, like what we did last time. Have somebody from each of your group share with the rest of us, how did the conversation go? It's less about the exact ones that you chose, but how did the conversation go for you as you were looking at these 9 different business outcomes? And so again, we'll go in order. We'll start with the green team, team number 1. What was your experience like selecting your 3 options?
Steve, would you like to screen share so we can
I can.
you narrate as we go.
There we go.
Thanks.
Hi, this is Claire from the Green Team.
Hey, Claire.
Hi. Yeah, we chose predictability, quality, and customer satisfaction. And our conversation really just started with, picking a scenario and amongst our group talking about if anybody had anything that was naturally coming up within our organization or team or related around Agile practices. And somebody had thrown out, predictability, the need for product and delivery teams to be predictable. And then immediately after talking about predictability and the need for product and delivery teams to be more predictable, we chose predictability to pull in because that was one of the cards, and about how really that is it's important to be able to get a feature or an epic and be able to have some tools in your back pocket where you can look at how to estimate work and how to be able to talk to your customers about what the expected outcomes are and when the feasibility of the work at hand. So we decided within that predictability and being able to talk to that leads into quality and being able to deliver to the expectations and put out a good product, and that in turn brings about customer satisfaction and the customers being able to have a good trust in the product that you're delivering.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you so much for sharing. All right. Thanks, Claire. That was team number 1. We're going to go to team number 2 and then team number 3. So team number 2, blue team. What was your experience like talking through the cards?
So we had a lot of great conversations and a lot of great points of view based on people's experiences. So a lot of things made their way to the top 3, and then we got shuffled around. We ultimately ended up with continuous improvement. One of the main reasons we're doing iterative type fast learning cycles. And everything seemed to come back to customer satisfaction and market responsiveness. So if we build products on time and on schedule and on budget, but it's something the customer doesn't want ultimately, then we haven't succeeded. Vivid came up with this great argument about innovate or die. So we kind of came around, the whole reason all companies are now software companies is because they're leveraging this great innovation and technology, but you can still build innovative products that maybe the customer doesn't have an appetite for. So we came back to, ultimately, our number 1 goal is to satisfy customer, and then the roll with the punches as far as the market's changing so quick that we've got to be agile enough to respond as the market changes so quickly. So that's
awesome. Great. Great. Sounds like a good conversation. Great. Thank you, Mark. All right. Team number 3. You had 3.5 choices.
Yeah, hi, this is Donna. We talked through the cards a little bit and then settled on a scenario because we realized that the particular scenario is probably going to determine the cards.
Yep.
The scenario we chose was a government client that just was having problems delivering, period. And we pretty quickly settled on productivity, speed, and predictability. And then somebody said, well, wait a minute, what about SLAs? They're probably going to be concerned about quality. And that was right about the time when we were coming back. So that's why the cards are stacked on top of each other. So we initially chose productivity because we felt like, if they're not delivering, period, and they need to be able to get productive and deliver something. And often with that comes a concern about speed and then predictability. But I think the end result would be to swap out maybe predictability for quality, and team members, if I got that wrong, please chime in.
All right, Donna, I think they're going with you on that one there, on that one there. Yeah, so you can think, let me zoom back out here. So you can see from this exercise, depending on the scenario and depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, those outcomes that you're looking for can vary. And so people, when they start asking me, you know, what's the one way to get out there to, you know, get to some of that greater agility, you know, I really hate to say that. It's that typical consulting response of, well, it depends. What we've done here is, and you know, you're going to get a copy of the mural board here that you can take with you, is I love to do this even within the same leadership team. I'll have, let's say, the CEO rank the top 3, and then I'll have like the COO rank the top 3, the CFO rank the top 3, and then maybe their direct reports. And what's interesting out of there is to see if I have alignment. Now, y'all were picking culture as, you know, one of the reasons why you had, let me pop up here a little bit, why each of these 3 groups here, the culture eats, you know, strategy for breakfast and stuff like that. Well, here's the interesting thing when it comes to culture and getting to greater agility. If you have alignment, not only in the culture, but in alignment in those things that are important to you, whether it's predictability, quality, customer satisfaction, or customer improvement, continuous improvement, customer satisfaction, market response. As long as you have that alignment, that is one of the keys to success here. And so what you can do with these 2 little simple exercises, whether it's, you know, the exercise number 1, and you start taking a look at the, what are we going to do to set up the environment or the ecosystem to enable agility? Or card number 2, what's the outcome that we're looking for? You can start to get that alignment around the direction that you want to go. Because if you're not aligned when you start a lot of these things here, my favorite saying, well, bless your heart, it is going to be a tough road going for you. And so using these 2 different techniques, 10 minutes is not enough time to really fully go into this. You know, you probably want to give yourselves with your, you know, like your management team, your executive team, you know, a good 30 minutes to actually walk through these, to discuss these in more detail. You can start to get that alignment, which is just so critical and so key to get things going. And so those were the 2 hopes and wishes that I wanted to have for you, to give to you. So as you go back and you start to have those conversations, you know, you can get alignment to ultimately increase your organization's agility. Just as a final wrap up on that exercise for those 9 cards, it's not unusual for the executive team to start to get a little snippy with me. Well, we need all 9 of them, and I need all 9 right now. Well, again, bless your heart, you can't do all 9 at once. You have to, you know, limit your work in process, focus in an area, and as team number 3 was kind of indirectly saying, well, if we did this, then it's going to impact that. Well, if we did that, it's going to impact this. All these things are related to each other. People always get, well, where's the perfect place to start first? I'm like, there is no perfect place to start first. But when you start to do conscientious work in one area, it's going to start to naturally bleed into other areas. So for example, when you increase quality, it will more than likely help to increase with productivity, speed, and predictability. When you've got continuous improvement, it will help you go faster to get market responsiveness, which will therefore get you some customer satisfaction, and it can kind of reiterate on itself, and so on and so forth. So don't be concerned about where's the perfect place to start. Start with one place, and it's going to naturally go into things outward. All right. with that, I think that's all I have here, just to respect the time box. Catherine, Sherry, over to you.
Thank you. But thank you so much, Steve, for joining us. We really appreciate it. This was great.
Awesome. Awesome. And again, I'll hang out in case anybody has questions. Other than that, have a great evening.